Hey guys, happy Thursday night. We're going to be on 2.2 in the middle of the page, give or take. We're going to go through this section and decide which of these statements are inductive or deductive reasoning. Remember that inductive reasoning is based off of a pattern or behavior, and then deductive reasoning is based off of laws, rules, or facts. So we're going to be asking ourselves that in the question. So number 1, a chemistry experiment produces the same result 20 times. You conclude that it will always produce the same result. So this, you want to ask yourself, am I following a pattern or am I following a rule? And in this one, you're definitely following a pattern, so that would make it inductive. So 1 is inductive. Number 2, Tim is Veronica's cousin. Since David is Veronica's twin brother, Tim is also David's cousin. So you want to ask, is this a pattern, or is this a rule, law, or a fact? These are facts, so this would make this deductive. This is not something that you can change. It's not something that you could rearrange. It's literally, Tim will always be Veronica's cousin. David is always Veronica's twin brother. That means Tim is always going to be David's cousin. Number 3, the school librarian notices that many students are requesting books about different countries in Africa. The librarian concludes that one of the social study classes must be studying Africa. So the key word is notice. This means she's watching behavior. So this is inductive because she notices. This one, number 4, Julie notices that each term in the sequence 1, 3, 9, 27 is found by multiplying the previous term by 3. She concludes that the next two terms are 81 and 243. This one is a trick question. It's trying to make you say deductive because it's a true fact. Each of them are being multiplied by 3. However, because she notices and that it is a pattern, this is going to be inductive. Given the sequence 19, 23, 27, 31, you conclude that the next term will be 35. So that is again following a pattern, so inductive. Number 6, we know that all men are mortal. Since John is a man, John is mortal. So this one would be deductive. This is a fact. We know men are mortal. John is a man. John is mortal. So that is deductive. And then the last one's all of the people that you met in town are very strange. You conclude that everyone in the town is very strange. So you're watching behavior. So again, inductive. So now that we reviewed inductive and deductive reasoning, we're on page 4. You're going to see a blank. The first blank is going to say law of detachment. There are 2 laws of deductive reasoning. So again, when you think of deductive reasoning, you want to think of like Sherlock Holmes, Nancy Drew, Dora the Explorer, maybe not her. But you're looking for facts and things like that. So there are 2 types of laws. There's the law of detachment. So if P then Q is a true conditional statement and P is true, then Q is true. So this sounds really difficult, but it is not. You're basically looking for the hypothesis to be fulfilled. Okay, and I'll give you an example here. You see this on your page. Basically, you're looking to make a conclusion only if the hypothesis is fulfilled. So in this first part, it says, if you study, then you will get a good grade. So the hypothesis is if you study, or just you study, and the conclusion would be you get a good grade. So we're going to see if our statements thereafter fulfill the hypothesis. So here's what I mean. Ruby studied. Does this fulfill my hypothesis? Yes, it does. Okay, if you study, well, Ruby studied. So what conclusion can we make about Ruby? Well, all you do is you look at the conclusion. So Ruby will get a good grade. Because Ruby studied, check mark, that means she will get a good grade. So we're going to say Ruby will get a good grade. All right, so then the next one, okay, we're still looking for the hypothesis to be fulfilled. It says Anne got a good grade. Does this fulfill the hypothesis? Does this say that Anne studied? It does not. So you would say cannot conclude. Okay? So the only time you can write something is if the hypothesis is fulfilled. Okay, so we'll see another example like this one. The next two. If a figure is a square, then it is a rectangle. You know that quadrilateral ABCD is a square. Using the law of detachment, what statement can you make? So here we want to find, we have one conditional sentence, we have the hypothesis, and then we have the conclusion. In order to make a conclusion, okay, we have to see if our next sentence fulfills the hypothesis. It says you know that quadrilateral ABCD is a square. Okay, so check mark. A figure is a square. Okay, well, quadrilateral ABCD is a square. So we're going to start a sentence about quadrilateral ABCD. Okay, so if it fulfills the hypothesis, you take that subject and you draw the conclusion. Okay, so ABCD is a square. So then what do we know about it? Then it is a rectangle. So if the statement following the conditional sentence fulfills the hypothesis, then you use the conclusion and the subject to do a new sentence. The next one, you have the answer already on accident. It is what it is. I'll explain to you, though. It says, if you have a doctor's appointment, then you will miss half a day of school. So my hypothesis is if you have a doctor's appointment, the conclusion would be you will miss half a day of school. So then you're going to fill a sentence about yourself. You had a doctor's appointment yesterday morning. So then what can we conclude? Well, yesterday morning you missed the first half of school, or just the half school. So you missed half a day of school. Okay? Because you fulfilled the hypothesis. You did have a doctor's appointment yesterday. So that means you will miss half a day of school. So that's the law of detachment. All you do is complete a sentence, a statement, using the previous conditional statement. The law of syllogism is a little different. It's different because instead of one conditional statement, you will have two conditional sentences. It's kind of a way to know when to use which. So it's something good to know. So again, you have two conditional sentences, and we're going to talk about them. So the first sentence, you'll have if P, then Q. So remember, P stands for your hypothesis. Q stands for your conclusion. So you'll have one sentence that looks like this. If P, then Q. Okay? Then you'll have a second sentence where the conclusion becomes your hypothesis. So that means it'll be at the front of the sentence and it'll say if, and then whatever your Q stood for. And then you're going to draw a new conclusion. So the main thing to know is that in this one, you will have an overlap. There will be one phrase that will be used in both sentences. Okay? And when that happens, this is also the transitive property. So let's give you an example of the transitive property, and you're going to use that here. If Zoe is in the same grade as John, and John is in the same grade as Lily, then Zoe and Lily are in the same grade. So read through that again. If Zoe is in the same grade as John, John is in the same grade as Lily, there's an overlap. John is the overlap. So we could draw a conclusion between Zoe and Lily because of John. So it's very similar to what we're doing here. There's going to be an overlap, and that's what you want to especially look for. So we see our first example. Basically, our goal in the law of syllogism is to make a new conditional statement. So I don't know if you want to write off to the side that's your goal. You're not going to make just a regular statement. You're going to make a conditional. So you want a new conditional. That's what your answer is going to be. Okay, so law of detachment, you're just making a sentence, okay, using the conclusion. But in the law of syllogism, you're going to make a new conditional. So basically the key to this is to find the overlap. So find where the same phrase is used as a hypothesis and a conclusion. Okay, so you want the same phrase to be used as a hypothesis and the same phrase as a conclusion. So let's read. If you study, then you'll get a good grade. So in this first sentence, you study is the hypothesis, and you will get a good grade is the conclusion. In the next sentence, if you get a good grade, then you will pass the class. So you get a good grade is now the hypothesis, you will pass the class is now the conclusion. So here's the really easy way to think of it. When you see the overlap, and I think that you can very easily, the overlap is you will get a good grade. Here's what you should do. You already have a hypothesis and a conclusion. What you're going to do is you're going to kind of cross out the overlap. And all that will be left will be a new conditional statement. Okay? If you study, then you will pass the class. All right, so we're going to write our new sentence. I did not mean to exit out of all of that, so I'm so sorry. Hopefully you can go back if you need it. So again, we're crossing out the overlap, and we're going to write that new sentence. So if you study, then you'll pass the class. And that would be the answer. Okay, so law of syllogism, you're trying to make a new conditional statement, and the best way to do it, okay, because you're given two conditional statements in order to make the new one, all you need to do is cross out the overlap, and the new sentence will just pop out for you. Okay, and you can see it in this little diagram down here. You'll have two conditional statements, and you'll use them, okay, to form a new statement. And again, notice the overlap. One of them was a hypothesis and one of them was a conclusion. Okay, so all that remained was one hypothesis and one conclusion, and that made you a sentence. Okay, so we're going to do this again with these two examples. So again, the number one thing is to find the overlap. So find the overlap. All right, and then the overlap needs to be a hypothesis and a conclusion. All right, so that's our goal. Find the overlap, and then we need that overlap to be a hypothesis and a conclusion. You can find that up there. I had to move it. So, if possible, use the law of syllogism to write a new conditional statement that follows from the pair of true statements. So we have if x squared is greater than 25, then x squared is greater than 20. If x is greater than 5, then x squared is greater than 25. So here is the overlap. This is what's matching. Okay, so we found the overlap. We need to decide if one of them is a hypothesis and one of them is a conclusion. The first one follows the word if, so that's good, and the second follows the word then. So that means, yep, one is a hypothesis, one is a conclusion. So we're going to cross them out, and there will be a conditional sentence already sitting there. You just write it. So you'll say if x is greater than 5, because that's the hypothesis, then x squared is greater than 20. And that would be your answer. The second, if a polygon is regular, then all the angles in the interior of the polygon are congruent. If a polygon is regular, then all its sides are congruent. So again, you want to find the overlap. So the overlap is a polygon is regular. You see it twice. However, the problem will come in this next part. It needs to be a hypothesis and a conclusion, but in both sentences, it's a hypothesis. So that is why this one you cannot do. So you'd write not possible. Okay, not possible. All right, we got one more to do together, then we'll just wrap it up. So this is the same section. If possible, use the law of syllogism to write a new conditional statement from the pair of true statements. If soccer practice is canceled, then you can go to the mall after school. If it is raining today, then soccer practice is canceled. So first, find the overlap, and it's about soccer practice being canceled. And then make sure that one of them is a hypothesis and the other one is a conclusion, and that is the case. So now you're going to cross them out. Okay, so now we're going to write a new sentence using what remains. So you need to find the hypothesis that is remaining, and it might not always be at the front of the sentence. So our hypothesis this time is towards the end. So you're going to write it as you see it. If it's raining today, all right, and then your conclusion. Then you can go to the mall after school. Okay, so if you read it all together, it would make sense. It would kind of sound redundant. So if soccer practice is canceled, then you can go to the mall after school. If it is raining today, then soccer practice is canceled. So then you can conclude, if it's raining today, then you can go to the mall after school. And that is your final answer. Okay? So, in conclusion, you're going to write this on the very back. This is how I'll know if you actually did this or not. On the very white section of your notes, the very, very back page where nothing is, you're going to write the differences between the two so that you have something quick to look at. We're going to talk about the law of detachment first. So the law of detachment, it's only one conditional statement. If the hypothesis is fulfilled, then the conclusion happens. So we have an example. If a plane flies to Europe, then the passengers will have a long flight. Aunt Marge is flying to Europe. So this fulfills, okay, she's flying to Europe. Then we can use her as the subject of the next sentence. So instead of saying the passengers will have a long flight, we're going to say Aunt Marge will have a long flight. Okay? So as long as the hypothesis is fulfilled, then the conclusion will happen. The law of syllogism, you're going to have two conditional statements. There should be a matching conclusion, hypothesis and conclusion, an overlap, that's what I called it. You're going to form a new conditional sentence using the unique hypothesis and conclusion. So the non-overlapping sentence. Your example. If we lose a game, then we run a practice. If we run a practice, then we will not be happy. So there is an overlapping phrase, and it's about running a practice. One of them is the hypothesis, and one of them is a conclusion. So the easiest way to write your new sentence is to kind of block them out, and then your answer will pop out. If we lose a game, then we will not be happy. Okay, that would be your final answer. Thank you for watching. Can't wait to play Mafia with you guys tomorrow.